There's a particular kind of fear you only get when the ground stops being ground. Not when it shakes a little, not when a crack appears in the street, but when the entire idea of solid earth turns into something temporary. John Martin painted that fear with an almost cruel clarity. And if you stand mentally inside his apocalyptic triptych, moving from paradise through judgment and into annihilation, you start to realize he wasn't just illustrating Revelation. He was taking the Victorian world's proudest certainties, like industrial and scientific progress, to ask a simple question. What happens when the universe decides none of it matters? The Last Judgement is the anchor in the middle, meant to hang between the calm of the plains of heaven on the left and the cataclysm of the great day of his wrath on the right. And Martin didn't even start with a triptych as the concept. There's a pencil and ink design signed 1845 that shows he planned this grand judgment scene first, and by the end of 1849, he was already working on the painting. On the left, the plains of heaven opens up like a breath you didn't know you were holding. Everything is light. The palette is cool and airy with soft blues and gentle greens. The landscape feels endless, but not in a threatening way. It's vast like peace is vast. The mountains in the distance dissolve into mist, and the water spreads out like a mirror that's been smoothed by time. Even the space feels kinder here, like there's room to exist. And then you notice the figures. Tiny, yes, but not panicked. They drift together in pale garments, and the whiteness of their forms echoes the whiteness of the clouds and the gleam of the water. Their smallness doesn't humiliate them. It makes them part of the scene. Interestingly, Martin uses a kind of tipped-up perspective in this panel. Instead of one strict horizon, the world seems to unfold upward and outward, letting you see more and more territory as your eye travels. It's not realism in the modern sense. It's more like a promise, like the land keeps opening because it can. This is a heaven that looks like nature perfected, nature made infrastructural, nature behaving the way we wish the world would behave all the time. Stable, luminous, orderly, generous. But the trick is that Martin gives you this serenity not to let you relax, but to set the emotional baseline for what comes next. Because once you've felt how calm the end can look, he pivots you into the center panel and the air changes. The middle canvas is the fulcrum. Above, the divine authority sits enthroned. Below, humanity becomes a tide of bodies. You can sense the sorting. The saved are drawn toward that luminous leftward space, toward the plains of heaven. And Martin gets strangely specific about who belongs there. The damned, meanwhile, spill and tumble to the right, which is downward, darker, and heavier. Even if you didn't know the biblical story, you'd feel the composition doing something to you. The painting pulls your gaze the way gravity pulls your body. It's like Martin is teaching you which way the universe is about to lean. And in the far distance, he plants a promise. And then you get the great day of his wrath. And it doesn't feel like a painting of judgment anymore. It feels like a painting of physics. Not moral drama, not an argument, an event. This is where Martin becomes the engineer of the abyss. The first thing you notice is that the horizon line is basically destroyed. Instead of looking out across a landscape, you're looking into a wound. The composition is built around a vast V-shaped chasm, a black void that everything seems to be sliding into. Most landscapes give you a place to stand. Martin gives you vertigo. Your eye is pulled inward, downward, again and again, like you're being dared to imagine the bottom. And the horror is that he doesn't let you see it. It's the sublime as obscurity, terror enhanced by not knowing how far the fall goes. If you've ever read Edmund Burke on the Sublime, you can hear his ideas clicking into place here. Burke argued that beauty relaxes us, but the sublime stops us. It creates astonishment, a kind of mental freeze rooted in fear. Vastness, power, darkness, emptiness. Martin loads the canvas with all of them. And the most unsettling part is that Martin's apocalypse is not cloudy and symbolic. It's heavy. It's geological. On one side, colossal rock masses shear away like shelves in a landslide. On the other, the architecture of a city is being ripped up and tilted into the void. It's one of the most vicious visual metaphors Martin ever painted. The city, which is civilization's pride, gets ripped from its foundations and reduced to rubble. This is what some critics called Martin's material sublime, and they meant it as an insult. To Samuel Taylor Coleridge, to John Ruskin later, there was something too mechanical about it, too theatrical, too reliant on sheer magnitude. But look at what he's actually doing. Martin is insisting that the apocalypse has weight. He's bridging prophecy and the emerging 19th century sense that the earth itself is unstable, literally. And once you accept that premise, his so-called materialism stops being vulgar and starts feeling disturbingly modern. Because it isn't merely spiritual terror. The palette makes that idea even sharper. The artist takes those lines and treats them almost like scientific specifications. The sky is not a serene dome. It's a bruised, polluted atmosphere. There's an eerie red glow diffusing through clouds and smoke. The light doesn't seem to come from above anymore. It comes from below, from fires and reflected hellish illumination. Even the sun doesn't behave like a sun. It's a darkened disk, a negation rather than a source. That inversion matters. In most religious art, light is salvation. You look upward toward radiance. Here, the painting forces your gaze downward into blackness, while the world is lit by catastrophe. It's not just the end of life, it's the end of orientation. And then there are the people. Or maybe people isn't even the right word, because Martin makes them so small they become like foam at the edge of a wave. They swarm at the foreground, clinging, scrambling, collapsing. You can pick out gestures, arms thrown up, bodies twisted, a kind of frantic animal insistence on survival. But there's no hero, no central martyr, no brave figure holding back the chaos. In many apocalyptic images, the drama is psychological. Who is saved? Who is damned? What do their faces look like as they realize their fate? Martin decenters all of that. His protagonist is the planet itself, convulsing. Humanity becomes biological debris. Martin turns this cosmocentric. The human story is still there, but it's reduced to a thin layer on the surface of something far bigger. In his hands, judgment isn't primarily a moral sorting. It's a revelation of scale. The kings and captains and rich men mentioned in Revelation are there but in the face of the abyss. The king and the slave become the same small, breakable thing. And this is where the Victorian context starts to glow through the biblical paint. Martin was working in an era drunk on progress. There was a real sense that human ingenuity was remaking the world. But it was also an era newly aware of what industry looked like up close. According to accounts, Martin was struck by the black country in the English Midlands. And if you've ever seen a 19th century industrial skyline, you can recognize it in his apocalypse. The biblical blood and fire becomes industrial atmosphere. The end times start to resemble a night journey past blast furnaces. At the same time, geology was changing how people imagined the Earth. The 19th century wasn't just discovering fossils, it was discovering time, deep time. The uncomfortable idea that the planet had a history far older than human stories, and that its surface had been shaped by forces that didn't care about us. And within geology, there was a fierce argument about how change happens. Is it slow and gradual? Or can it be sudden, violent, catastrophic? Martin's canvas is basically a manifesto for catastrophe. And in the central painting, he slips in a detail that turns Revelation into a comment on his own century. A railway train tumbling into the abyss. On the right side with the damned, he packs in worldly corruption. Richly dressed women like Salome and the whore of Babylon, alongside lawyers and clergymen, down to a bishop and a pope. And beneath the chaos, the forces of evil collapse, with the armies of Gog and Magog, as the sand of the sea, also falling. This is also why his apocalyptic paintings feel so cinematic. Disaster on a scale so total, you can't process it intellectually first. You feel it first. You sit in the dark and let the end of the world happen to you safely. But he isn't just a painter of destruction. He's also, bizarrely, a man who spent huge portions of his life designing ways to save London. He drew up plans for grand, infrastructural fantasies of order imposed on urban chaos. And that duality is almost too perfect to ignore. In paint, he destroys cities with gleeful precision. On paper, he tries to protect a real city from filth, disease, collapse. It's the same obsession seen from two angles: order versus entropy. The engineer trying to hold back the flood, the artist imagining the moment the flood wins. So when you look at the Great Day of his Wrath as just a religious illustration, you miss the deeper anxiety. The terror isn't only that God is angry. The terror is that everything we build, everything we rely on, stands on a foundation that is not guaranteed. Martin uses his creativity to humiliate human certainty.